Now, please stand and we'll read Scripture together. This is John 13, 34 and 35. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, you must love one another. So you must love one another. By this everyone will know you are my disciples if you love one another. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for its power. We pray that we're going to learn from your word, apply it to our lives this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. You may be seated. Arcadia basketball team lost last night. You know that? The girls. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, too bad. You know that? I was at the Maranatha girls game as the announcer, and Maranatha won, so they were going to play Arcadia next, I think. No. Anyway, so it's the playoff time. So I coached the girls team at San Gabriel Christian, the girls basketball team. So 7th is middle school, and I used to coach a long time ago when I was a math teacher, and so now I coach mostly because my wife is the athletic director and she needs a coach, and I like basketball, but when we have a team, one of the things that's important is to bond as a team and have teamwork. And in basketball, it's an extreme team sport, so that really ties into the topic today, which is basically how to love one another. And so one of the reasons I like sports is that it creates situations where you have to love one another. So a team that doesn't love one another doesn't do very well. They're selfish. And in basketball, it's easy to be selfish because there's one ball and 5 players on the court. And so some of the best players, like in the past, Kobe Bryant or people like that, they sometimes wouldn't pass to other players because they were so good, but that also sometimes they were criticized for being selfish, right? So, like I have a really good point guard who's, I want to shoot all the time, but she's unselfish, so she passes to her teammates, and sometimes they say you should shoot more because you're better, but the bigger picture is, she's unselfish, so she would sometimes rather have the other team, a teammate score than she would, even though she's better. And so we played a game last Tuesday, and so she's point guard, and so I put in a new play where she's in the middle, and the other 4 players, 2 are on one side and 2 on the other side, way out to the side. And so basically it leaves her open to drive to the basket. It's because there's space. And so that's kind of an extreme, if they play a man-to-man defense or woman-to-woman defense. And so 8 times in the first quarter, she beat her player and scored a layup. 8 times. So we were ahead 20, and then so we were ahead 22-4, I think, after 7 minutes. It's because somebody, and the other coach should have changed to a zone defense to stop, but he didn't change. But then she came over to me and she said, Coach Pearce, can someone else take that position? So like or another player, because she was kind of embarrassed to keep scoring, right? But she also was kind of worried, she wanted somebody else to be involved. So she wanted another player to play that, to play that position so she could score. And I said, no, you can stay there. We need to. But so that was a dilemma, though. But it was because of the teamwork. She cared about her teammate. And so that's one of the reasons, for instance, every year we have a retreat for the basketball team. So last Friday afternoon, we didn't have practice, so we had a retreat. And some teams did overnight, but I'm too old for that, so I don't stay up very late. So a retreat was 3. So I took them to the climbing gym in Arcadia, Hangar 18, right over here. Have you been there, Austin?
No.
That was pretty cool. My daughters used to have. No? Have you been there? Climbing? No. Yeah, it's cool. So it's a great sport. So I took my team there, all 10 of them, and in climbing you have it's team oriented. So if you use ropes, there's one person who has a harness. Or did you do it with ropes?
No.
No, just the bouldering. Yeah, but with the ropes, were you sore afterwards?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good workout. So that's my main workout now. Twice a week I go climbing, but inside. Yeah. Anyway, so but one is up on you have a rope and you climb up high, and so if you fall, then somebody catches your fall with the rope. That's called the belayer. So, but that builds trust, because you have to trust the person who's holding your rope, right? And if you fall, it's pretty scary. And bouldering, though, it's when you fall, there's a mat. So it's Anyway, did you fall very much?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, some of the holds are like that big or there. Yeah. So anyway, so we went to the climbing gym, and then we went to soup plantation at dinner, and then we went to my house and just hung out and played table tennis and watched a movie. So the purpose was to build a love between the team, so they know each other. And so that's really what this passage is about. Jesus basically says it's a new command, and so this is very late in his ministry. Jesus is getting more serious about his teaching, because he knows that pretty soon he's going to go to the cross and die. And so this passage, Jesus says, right before, the context of it is in John 13:33. He says directly, "Little children, yet a little while I'm with you." So he's saying that I won't be here much longer. You will seek me, and just as I said to the Jews, so now also I say to you, where I'm going you cannot come. So he's basically saying he's going to heaven, and they can't follow him like they were following him on earth. And then he says, "A new commandment I give you, that you love one another." And so when you read new commandment, you say, well, what's the old commandment? So the old commandment, when you look back, seems to come from Matthew 22:37-39, when Jesus is asked, what is the greatest commandment? And he says, the greatest commandment is to love God and love your neighbor. And so now he's saying, well, actually, you need to love one another. And that's really what it's about. Because Jesus is leaving, and so he needs to be able to leave his disciples as those that love one another in the way that Jesus loved them. And so the other interesting thing is when you read love, this is sometimes tricky when you translate the Bible, because some languages, many languages, there are three words. For instance, there are three Greek words for love, and when you read love in the New Testament, you say, well, which love is that? And so when we read the word love, that means, does it mean love the way I love my wife, or does it mean love between friends, or does it mean between teammates? So that's something to look at. So the three different kinds of love. The first is eros. So when that's a Greek word for love, it means romantic love. That's where the word erotic comes from. There's actually an Indian Bollywood movie studio called Eros Entertainment. So all their movies are romantic movies. And so that's one type of love, and it's basically it's appreciation of the beauty within a person. It can still be, having a romantic feeling for my wife is important, and so but this is a love. This is a romantic love. So this is not what Jesus is talking about when he says you love one another. So it's not romantic love, obviously. Another kind of love that's famous, that's translated as love, but the Greek word is philia. And so that's usually the friendship type of love. So that's where the city Philadelphia comes from. So it was actually founded by a man named William Penn, and he was a Quaker. Quakers are a brand of Christianity where they are peace-oriented. And so William Penn said, we're going to name the city Philadelphia, which means city of brotherly love, this kind of love. And the ironic thing is that Philadelphia sports teams, the fans are known to be the meanest fans. Did you know that? So when the sports teams do badly, or when the opposing teams come, they get booed mercilessly by the fans. And then one of the most famous quotes about Philadelphia fans is that they boo Santa Claus. So they're mean. So that's ironic because philia means brotherly love, close friendship, and so that's not what this kind of love is talking about. So it's not erotic love or eros love. It's not Philadelphia love, which is brotherly love, like between friends. This is agape love. And so this is a very, very powerful love. Some people call it 1 Corinthians 13 love. And basically I call it love in action. It's also sacrificial love. When we read 1 Corinthians 13, we read love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous. And so I think I told you before about my high school girlfriend. Okay, so I was a junior, and she was a freshman, and she was so friendly, but you know, I thought she was cute. You know, and I told her I was going to. I think I told her I was going to marry her when I was a junior in high school. I was so immature, and she must have thought I was crazy. But I was, you know, I was tall and good grades, and on the basketball team. So anyway, and she was a top 20 tennis player in the U.S. So anyway, but I was so jealous. I think I told you before when this tan, tall tennis player moved from Hawaii. You know, and she started to like him. You know, that was devastating. But what happened was I became jealous, and so that was a selfish love. And so that's not this kind of love we're talking about. And so that's a test of agape love. Is are you jealous? And I think I've told you before. Later, my dad had died. My mom was a widow. This is after when I was maybe 35, I think. Yeah, and she met a nice man in the grocery store who was remember the story? Yeah, a nice man whose wife had died of cancer. So he was a widower. They met at the grocery store. And my mom sort of knew him, and I knew him from the tennis club, and she said, I'm so sorry to hear that your wife passed away. I know what it's like to lose a spouse. And he said, oh, how about we go out to dinner together? And so they went out to dinner, and about a month later, he proposed to marry her. And so but the amazing thing was, his son was the guy that stole my girlfriend. Yeah, so he became my stepbrother. Isn't that amazing? But I had forgiven him. Because I knew it was my issue, right? It wasn't his issue. Because my love for my girlfriend was not healthy. When I look back, I'm so thankful that she dumped me, right? Because it was not a healthy love. I was jealous and self-centered, you know. Anyway, so I had forgiven, even though I didn't tell him that I forgave him, you know. But in my heart, forgiveness is from the heart. So I forgave. You remember the story, Charlotte, right? No, I haven't told this story. This is my anyway. So I forgave him in my heart, and then just think if I hadn't, I would have told my mom, you can't marry the father of the guy that stole my girlfriend, right? But he married somebody. He married somebody else. So that's an important part of the story. It would have been a little bit awkward if he had married, you know, my former girlfriend. But anyway, he married somebody else, 2 daughters, and we weren't close friends because we're both older. But we were very, you know, family gatherings. It was fine, you know. So that's the. I got off track a little bit. Anyway, this type of love, this agape love, is not jealous. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I was very jealous. You know, when we look at Hebrews 13, 1 and 2, this love is talking about hospitality. It says, let the love of the brothers continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by this some have entertained angels without knowing it. So this kind of love is hospitable, it is sacrificial, and so you know, when and it's also it's not something you brag about. It's just something that's from your heart, and that's why Jesus talked about it. So I was at one of the hardest things is to practice agape love to somebody who doesn't appreciate it or who doesn't even notice. And so one of my childhood friends when I was growing up, and actually I've known him since the day I was born. When I came home from the hospital, he was my neighbor next door. And growing up, we played together. He was about 4 years older than me. And when he became a teenager, he developed schizophrenia. You know what that is? So he thought he heard voices. He stuttered, so he was very uncomfortable around people. He couldn't really go to school. Just a real hard thing. Lived with his mom, but he and I were such close friends that when I was with him, he didn't stutter, and we just had this deep love for one another. And then his mom, I moved away. His mom passed away, and that he went downhill after his mom died, and maybe he's in his 40s by then. And so he ended up. We heard he moved to a place to care for adults who have schizophrenia and other issues, because they can put on medication and get counseling. So we heard he was in Ramona, which is near north of San Diego, and he was there getting treatment, and actually seemed like he was doing pretty well. And then I lost track of him, and then about 5 years later, his aunt came to visit my mom and said, actually, he's living independently in a condo in Laguna Niguel, and so he's doing amazingly well because he's on medication. He lives close to his cousin, and so his cousin gives him his medication. And so I said, wow, that's great. So I went and I called his cousin and I arranged a meeting, and then I went to visit him, and we walked on the beach. And so he is doing amazingly well, but he still is schizophrenic, and so he can't have a job. He's basically just lives on his own, kind of his own world. And so about every 6 weeks, I drive down there to visit him because of my love for him. We have the history and it's a sacrifice. It takes an hour and 30 minutes in traffic to drive to southern Orange County. And I know that he doesn't really remember when I come because he's kind of in a different world. And it's really interesting when we're talking, when we're walking on the beach and talking, he'll say things that are, about, I can't remember the last comment, but he's not living in reality, basically. So he still hears voices. But I've learned so much from that friendship because it's a sacrifice to drive down there. He doesn't say thank you for coming, but it doesn't matter because we have this strong love, and so that's a test. And so it's really interesting. I think God tested me on that. This last Thursday, I was visiting him, and we always get a slice of pizza at a pizza place, and then this time he wanted to get ice cream at McDonald's. So we went to McDonald's, and walking around that area, there's another man who also has some mental health issues. So apparently that area is safe for people to live, and you can walk different. So there's this. He's a big man. He's again, I'm not sure what his condition is, but he's not living. Has major mental health issues, but he's wandering around, and so I saw him at the pizza place, and everybody knows him so he came walking into McDonald's. So my friend got in line and ordered an ice cream, and then I was kind of standing behind him, but I was looking at my phone, and this guy comes and steps right in front of me. He didn't even notice me, and he got right in front of me, orders a big order, like a Big Mac and French fries and something else, and the person says, all right, that'll be $16.99. Okay, that's a lot of McDonald's food, right? And so he takes out a wad of bills. He starts counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he gets to 16, and he counts 16, gives them to the cashier, and the cashier counts it 1, 2, 3, 4, 14. So first he says, please give me one more, and then he counts at 14. So he's 3 short. And so, I haven't done this very, but I was led by God to say, okay, just add, because I was going to order ice cream. I said, just add that to my, add an ice cream to that and I'll pay for it. And so, and then I get the, then it was going to be changed. It was complicated, but so I basically paid for it. The $3 short. I didn't pay for the whole thing because he already given $14, right? So I paid $3, and so I paid for it, and he never even knew it, even though the guy had said it, and he didn't say thank you. He just, but it was a good test because I don't care. I was doing the right thing, and I was showing love, this agape love, which is costly, it's sacrificing. I mean, $3 is not much of a sacrifice, right? But still, I think God was testing my heart. And actually, I learned this from my son Hudson. I told you he works at Wendy's, and so he said it's pretty common that someone will come in and who is not all there mentally, and that will buy something and be short. And so what does Hudson takes money out of his pocket and just pays for it, So not so that that's agape love. And the key thing is that it comes from God, from our heart. And so when we look at 1 John 4, verse 8, God is love. Everything God does flows from this kind of love, this agape love. And that's what Jesus does. So when Jesus said, "A new command I give you," he's basically saying, I'm not here anymore walking around, so you need to be like me on earth. You need to love people the way I love people, which is sacrificially. And when we look at the parable of the Good Samaritan, remember that? So the man is walking down the road and he gets mugged, and the priest comes and basically doesn't want to get involved because it's a great sacrifice to help somebody. And then the Jewish leader comes and doesn't want to be involved, but the Samaritan comes and says, takes care of him, sends him to an inn, and says whatever it costs to help him, bill me. And so that's this kind of agape love. When the ministry I serve with is called International Students, and we have something called International Christian Fellowship. So we have a fellowship of international students, and students come from all over the U.S. and have needs. And so here's an example of one of these students who kind of wrote his testimony. It says, when Scott came to the U.S., I think he came from Taiwan, he had no friends or relatives, and he was lonely. And so when people are lonely, that's a chance to show love. He felt no one cared about him, and then someone he met at school invited him to this fellowship. And since he was free on Friday nights, he went, and he said that people were so nice, and it felt so warm and so welcome. And he said he was touched by the music, food, the fellowship, and the kindness. And then he went on to say, as I continue to get to know the people, they helped me a lot. They taught me how to live in the U.S., such as applying for a Social Security card, how to rent an apartment, how to get a driver's license, how to buy a car, and they were even willing to drive me anywhere to do these things. So that's the sacrificial love. People, it takes time. And so this had a huge impact on him, and he later was baptized and became part of a wonderful church. And so this is the type of the agape love. We're tempted to say this is just brotherly love, but this agape love is the love of God. And in my I've been working on doing some research on what is attractive about ministry and fellowships. And so there was a huge study done by a professor of a Taiwanese church in El Monte. You're not supposed to say who it is, but it's and so it's got about 1,000 members. And so it turns out when people come there, people come from Taiwan to Los Angeles, and they find themselves living in a big house in the suburbs, maybe, and they're lonely because in Taiwan, have anybody been to Taiwan? No. What is it? So in Taiwan, there's amazing night markets, right? Have you been to 626 night market? So you multiply it by 10. You haven't been? Yeah. You multiply it by 10 and you have the night markets in Taipei, and you have the culture. You have you live in a neighborhood where you have lots of friends around you. You have big families. The culture is very strong. And so when someone comes to Los Angeles to live, they find is very different. You don't have the culture. You don't have the food. You don't have the night markets. In Taiwan, if you needed something, your neighbor maybe was a dentist, could help you. If you needed someone to fix your car, someone could, you would know somebody. But when you come here, you're lonely. And even most of your family members are probably still in Taiwan. And so what happens, maybe an uncle says, I live in Orange County, but I hear there's a really good Taiwanese church in Almaty. And you don't have to be a Christian, you don't have to be interested in God, but you should go because they said they have food, they have a program for your kids, they have wonderful the church members who are doctors or dentists or mechanics, and they can help you. So that person goes, and they say, and they get there, and they get loved on. So all those things are instruments of love. So the food is a love language for many people. The music is wonderful. The Taiwanese language, the Shalom Bao, right? So it's just like going to Din Tai Fung, when you go to the church, because they have a huge kitchen at that church. And then after church, there's badminton. They have a gym, so they play badminton. And so unlike an American church, they stay there all day. So there are meetings but what it is, it's a way to get loved on. And so it's a situation where you get loved on, and then and they say, oh, this is so great, I'm going to come back. Even though I'm not interested in God, because they say I'm Buddhist, but they come back, and then the next Sunday, somebody says, oh, we really need help with the serving the meal, because it's hard to serve all those people. And so somebody said, you don't have to be a Christian, but you can just, we need someone just to serve the food. And so they start serving, and that gives them a chance to love others. So that's this passage is you love one another. It's not one way. So they start loving by serving, and then they say, oh, this is wonderful. And then they start to behave like a Christian because they are there all the time, and their friends are Christians. And so the pastor says, oh, you should pray for so-and-so because they're sick. And they say, okay, I'm going to pray because pastor told me. Right? And then they say, I really love this music, so I can get it on. Somebody says, yeah, you can get this music on YouTube. You can listen to it all week, the Taiwanese praise music, and there's wonderful music. And so they start to behave like a Christian. And because of the love, they start loving and receiving the love. And then next thing you know, they're baptized and they become a member of the church. And so it's all about this loving one another. And so I think when we think about how to implement this command, Jesus is commanding us to love one another, we need to be interacting with people. And so when I was at Cal Poly, I think I told you, I always go the first day that my daughter goes to pray over the classrooms and to help her find her classrooms. But the one thing I do also is I end up helping people because people are totally lost. Maybe you help people too, Austin, right? No?
I don't know anything there.
You don't know your way around Cal Poly?
I only know for my class.
Okay, yeah. So I've learned, because this is her 4th term, but you've been there, this is your 2nd year?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's, yeah. But anyway, I always study the map, and because I want to find out where her classrooms are, and it's confusing, because like building 40, there's numbers. Like building, do you know where building 41 is? Yes, do you know where the brick is? Yeah, so it's behind them. That's the Bronco Recreation Center. It's behind there. It's like an old gym near the pool. And my daughter there's a kinesiology lab in there. Anyway, so it's really confusing because they have a lot of schools. The buildings have names, but Cal Poly they have numbers like building 1, building. You know where building 162 is? There we go, business school. That's where you go there all the time. Yeah. So anyway, this college is huge. So when I'm there, I end up people asking me, because I'm older than the typical student, right? I So anyway, so people ask me, where is such and such a building? And I'm always happy to tell them. So that's a chance. But if I was not there, I wouldn't have a chance to help people. So I think that one of the big action steps from this lesson from Jesus is that we need to put ourselves in a position to love people. If we're just in our rooms or not interacting with people, not out in the community, we don't have an opportunity to do this love. Okay, so that's something that I've learned is I want to be out, I want to look for opportunities that God can use me to help people, to serve people. So one of my I think I've told you one of my favorite things is to pick up students at the airport. So that's a big sacrifice to go to LAX in the middle of the night or during rush hour, but that's a chance to serve sacrificially. When we look at the goal of what Jesus is saying, so we've talked a lot about the first part. You love one another, just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. So that's the model of Jesus. So this is called incarnational love. So Jesus loved us so much that he left his comfort zone of heaven and came to earth. And he ate human food, he had human emotions, he wore human clothing, he spoke human language. And so that's what he did. So what we need to do sometimes is get out of our comfort zone and look for opportunities to love on, we say love on people with this agape love. And then he says, the reason by this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And so this is one of the challenges, and this is something that can turn people off from Christianity if we don't display that love. And so there are situations sometimes where I start to feel selfish, especially when I'm tired. After 9 o'clock, my daughter will say, "Oh, Dad, can you help me print something, print my assignment?" And that's a dilemma because if I'm tired, then I get a little bit grumpy, and we don't have that love. The love for one another kind of goes away because of tiredness. So we have to guard against that. So that's one reason to get more sleep, Austin, right? During school, so you are not tired. So that's something. So that when we take care of our bodies and nurture our souls and our physical bodies, then we are more able to love one another. And I think ultimately, when we are with people, we need to. The Bible says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Those are all loving qualities. And so we have the Spirit of God in us. That makes a big difference. And so I think when we talk about our friendships, our investment in people, we really need to do what Jesus wants us to do, which is to love other people sacrificially. And when we do that, we get tired. And so that's where we need to be. The fuel is the Word of God, memorizing Scripture, and loving people. And last thing I think is as we think about just living life and what this looks like. It's easy to be on our phones and just think about ourselves, but when we can even use social media to love people. Okay, so with a lot of my Indian friends, I'll message them and say, "How are you doing?" And "How can I help you?" or something like that. So I think we can still use social media as a tool to love people. And again, that's one of the things I love about coaching basketball, because it puts me in a position to love my team and put the team in a position to love one another. And I think I've told you this before. This is the last part. One of my favorite people to love are involved involved in the sport. They're the referees. And so one thing I do, and one of the best ways to love someone is to just know their name. Sometimes we see people, we interact with people we don't even know their name, and so And many coaches, they'll say, "Hey ref," or "Hey blue," or something like that. But I always learn their names, and it's really amazing the impact that has on the referees. And so our game last Tuesday, I learned their names, and sometimes I forget, but I write it down. And I say, so there's David and Eric, and pretty quickly I say, I address them by their names. So if I want a timeout, I say, I go like this. I say, timeout, Eric, or something like that, because the coach is in. And then, but pretty soon, you know what they start doing? They start calling me by my name, which is very unusual. And so that shows that it's had an impact on them. And then, and also, there are a lot. So last Tuesday we were playing an away game, and one of my players was late to the game because she had to stay in her class, and so she showed up right at the beginning of the third quarter. And what I've learned is if you put a player in a game without having to warm up, what happens? She misses everything, right? So, yeah, she hasn't warmed up. And so I had this idea, well, after she comes, I'm going to call a timeout, and then I'm going to send her out on the court to warm up really quick. And she has, so there's a minute, right, to shoot shots, right? So that's better than nothing. And so, so I called time. So but before, like at halftime, I talked to David, one of the referees. I said, David, I think, and it's actually not legal to do that in high school, to have your players practice during a timeout. But I said, David, can you help me out here? I said, she just arrived. She was really, she was late because of school reasons, and so can she shoot, for a minute after when I call timeout? He said, oh, that's not allowed. I said, come on, David. But because we had that relationship, right? It wasn't. And you should allow it for junior high, right? It's not high school. So, and the other coach didn't mind. So anyway, but he was pretty strict about it. But because we had the relationship, it was a benefit. And the other thing that happens too is, because I never complain, I never say, you missed that call, 3 seconds, because that's not helpful. And so, but I'll say, like on our Thursday game, there's somebody in the key a long time, so you can't stay in the key, for more than 3 seconds, right? And so someone of the players was there a long time. I said, hey Henry, I think that was about 2.5 seconds. Getting close, so as he was thinking, so he could think about it, right? But I didn't want to say, she was in there for 5 seconds. But I said, Dave, honey, was that about 2.5 seconds? Maybe your watch is slow. They actually sometimes they count, and even if you have one toe in the key, some of them will call it, right? Yeah, but at this level, a lot of them they say they give a warning and say, watch it, get out of the key. But anyway, the point is, one of my favorite people to love are referees. And they don't receive much love, do they? They get a lot of, but I think that's one of the keys is, and that's why I love sports, is we get in a position. That's why I love ministries. We put ourselves in a position to love. Coaches often say, I want to put my team in a position to win, right? That means we practice, we're prepared, we have good plays, and so then it's up to the players, right, how they play. But my job as a coach is to put my team in a position to win. You hear that a lot. But in terms of this passage, I want to put myself in a position to love others, right? And so that means I'm out active with people. I love going on campus because there's a lot of people that need help, right? That's why I love tutoring and math. I want to put myself in a position to love people, and not for selfish reasons, because it's often a sacrifice, but because it's the commandment of Jesus to love one another. And if we do this well, it's a great testimony for the kingdom of God, because then they will know. People say, why are you so nice, or why are you helping me? And I say, it's because of the love of God in me. And it's because Jesus loves me, so he told me to love others. I mean, it's right here in the Bible. And by doing that, we'll know that I am a disciple of Jesus, and he will know because we shine a light in the world when we do this. It's not common to love sacrificially, and so that's what we need to think about. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for your love that you extend to us, your agape love for us, sacrificial love. May the same type of love also extend through us to others who need your love. Please equip us with the courage to reach out to others and love them with this love that is pure, rich, and above all, sacrificial. We give you thanks for the gift of agape love that blesses us. Through Jesus, may we be a blessing to others. In the name of Jesus, amen.